Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to AlMaghrib's YouTube channel. Faith While Black is the series. Make sure that you turn on your notifications and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu salamu ala rasulillah. Very excited and happy to have with us the esteemed Imam Dr. Nasir Ahmed, who Dr. Nasir I met almost a couple of years ago now in Miami at Masjid Al-Ansar in Miami, Florida, where he's been the Imam since 1977 and is the Assistant Regional Imam for the Southeast United States. And he was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, and he is a doctor by profession where he practices in South Florida. And so welcome, Dr. Nasir.
Thank you. Alhamdulillah.
It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillah. And so we've got a lot of things to discuss and unravel, and really looking to benefit from your experience and from your expertise and your knowledge. And so just from the onset, can you tell us a little bit about your own personal journey and how you became the Imam of Masjid Al-Ansar in Miami?
Yes, like most African Americans, I was born here in the States, and my parents raised me in the tradition of the Christians. And like most of us, we had very sincere parents, but there was this big contradiction in the country for 400 years, wherein my generation couldn't reconcile what we were taught and what we were seeing in the streets in terms of riots, injustice, and so on and so forth. So many of the youngsters at my age, when we were 19 and 20 years of age, we couldn't take what was the norm in this country in terms of African Americans accepting second-class citizenship. And we didn't see anything in the religion that seemed to address it. And so many of us, we drifted at that time to the Black Power movements, which there were many of them. And the one that was the most prominent at that time and the most productive was that leadership of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, called the Nation of Islam. And it wasn't the teachings of the Prophet, but it held in sacredness the Quran. It gave us the language of Islam and the recognition to the Prophet, though not clear to us. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us at that time that we are to take the Quran and put it on the highest shelf in our house. And his teacher, his name was Father Muhammad, told him, Elijah Muhammad, don't worry about teaching them the religion. Your children will teach them the religion, the correct religion, So Muhammad. And so many of us, we joined in the 60s and so on and so forth. And it wasn't a reaction. At that time, we never participated in.
And Chicago is obviously their strongest community. Yeah. Headquarters.
Mm-hmm. And we never joined any protest movements, nothing like that. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us, don't be sidetracked. What the African American people needed at that time is not a lot of shouting and yelling, but they needed a model community. So under his leadership, he took the translation of religion, which was Islam, with the way we understood it, and he built schools and mosques and restaurants and bakeries, farmland, so that we could see the reality of Islam more than just a talking religion. But
okay, so I wanna delve into this with you, because Elijah Muhammad is, he's kind of dismissed in Orthodox, Muslim circles because of the notion of heresy, claiming to be a prophet. Okay, right. And to a smaller degree, I can empathize with that in the sense of being Sudanese, we also have a great figure in our history who claimed to be Al-Mahdi.
Right.
He didn't claim to be a prophet, but he claimed to be Al-Mahdi.
We could accept that.
No, but he's also dismissed. He's also dismissed as a heretic. However, the man was able to mobilize Sudan to expel the British.
Yes.
And so within Sudan, we understand he's not the Mahdi, but you know what? He's still right. Yeah. But whereas people outside of Sudan, they just look at him as some sort of, literally a charlatan, right? And so I want to move beyond the discussion about prophethood and not prophethood, but I want to look at Elijah Muhammad as far as a community that he created, and as far as whatever reform he was able to do in the African American community. And for that, as someone who grew up in that movement and was attracted to that movement as a teenager, what attracted you about the Nation of Islam as a kid in Chicago? And what transformation were they able to do in the African American community?
Yes. During slavery, our people in America were not allowed to have family life. You couldn't have father and mother, husband and wife together. If there were children, they were separated from the parents. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he restored family life to the African American by the thousands across the United States. The strongest and most stable family life was in his community. And
what did that mean? He restored it. Does that mean that they would, you needed to get married? There was pressure on you to get married, or what?
Exactly. In order to be a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, once you grew to maturity, you had to accept the responsibility of husband, the responsibility of wife, the responsibility of parents, of which is a big problem in the African American community to this day.
Yes.
Marriage is not a sacred institution in the majority of the African American community. Sex is wild, it's lost its social context. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he established that very, very strong. I'm not saying that it wasn't in the Christian community. I'm saying the most paramount example that you could see was it was magnified in the community of the Nation of Islam at that time, And so he was the leader to restore the biggest problem, which is the problem of the family unit. As we have in the Quran, "O you who believe, save yourselves and your families from a fire." So he was one who could take the concepts of the Quran, and though he didn't give it to us in Arabic, he gave us a practical application. Before we even understood the Arabic, we were practicing the Quran, we were practicing the religion. Even in his time, as early as the 1950s, he published a book on prayer, how to make the prayer. I'm talking about the Orthodox prayer that we pray right now.
Yeah.
And he did it to our community, But the problem was...
But I thought the Nation of Islam prayer doesn't have bowing and prostrating.
No. I'm saying he gave us the book, okay? He gave us a handout. I even have it myself.
Yeah.
What we did at that time, he used to tell us we were a baby nation. This is what he would tell us. And so what we called prayer was really dua. We would stand and we'd have our hands out in the position of dua, and that's what we thought was prayer at that time. We didn't know better.
Yeah.
But we did have the publication that he put out on the prayer and its proper movements, and he told us the Islamic prayer is the best prayer service in the world. He made this public, But we weren't ready at that time, just like most of us, we can't speak Arabic to this day. So if we can't speak Arabic as our mother tongue, there are many things in the religion we just didn't have because they took the traditions and knowledge away from our ancestors, our parents.
Yeah.
So So we were empty vessels. And when you have an empty vessel, you know you can put anything in it.
Mm.
And that's what happened to us as African Americans. Yeah.
So the prayer and the community aspect of it, was there a lot of focus on economic empowerment? Was there a lot of focus on social empowerment? You say Elijah Muhammad also, by the way, you say Elijah Muhammad told us a lot. Was he accessible? Was he accessible to you? Was he accessible to people?
Yes, he was.
In any particular fashion, or?
Yes, you know, he would do most of his lectures when he was a young man himself. And we would have question and answer sessions. We had, as I said, we had our schools and et cetera all across the United States. He traveled across the United States so that people could be close to him and hear him face up, you know, not just over a phone, over a microphone, or just a radio. He did what he could do with the advances that were available at that time to bring leadership that was practical to the African American community. Yeah. For example, he told us to try to help the men give us a sense of identity. He called us the fruit of Islam. And you know, some may know, may not know, the abbreviation was the FOI. And
you don't mess with the FOI, yeah.
But most people didn't understand. It meant the fruit of Islam. And what it meant was that we were put in a language environment. You know, sometimes, you know, you have a prison environment where you have bars, you know, and a person is not free. So we, instead of having bars, we were put in a language environment that held us. And I want to give an example. For example, back then, we didn't say Assalamu alaikum. We used to say ICE, I-C-E, Salam alaikum. And the teacher, he knew that wasn't Islam. I'm not talking about Elijah Muhammad now. I'm talking about his teacher. He knew that was wrong, but he wouldn't give us the correct language because it was a plan. And what I mean is that when we were saying Assalamu alaikum, it was saying that our community under Elijah Muhammad was put in put on ice, meaning that until we grew in the knowledge of the religion of the Quran and the Sunnah of Muhammad, we were put on ice where that no longer would our resources be used by other people to take advantage of us. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Just like you take water and you put water in the refrigerator, right? Yeah. It becomes ice to hold it for maybe a day or so, then you use the ice. Well, this is what the Nation of Islam was. It was a containment while we were growing in the knowledge of Islam. And then the esoteric language, all of this hidden meaning would be brought out. So we would, for example, we would use the term Assalamu alaikum, which meant that our resources were frozen until we matured in the understanding of the religion. And I give another example. We used to call the women the MGT, which meant Muslim Girls Training, because remember, all of our knowledge was taken away from us. And in this country, they grew us as strong bodies, but raised us as weak minds. So most blacks in America were children. And I know there's African Americans listening now, and I know I'm offending a lot of them, but listen, if you are sick, you need medicine. Yeah. And medicine sometimes, like me, I'm a surgeon, sometimes I have to put a needle in a person and it hurts the person. And the person says, they tell me, they say, I hate doctors. I hate dentists. They tell me this. Yeah. And then once I inject them with the needle, right? And they have no more pain, they say, oh, doctor, I just love you.
They love you after that.
So sometimes it's the same thing with our people. We were raised with very powerful backs to be the mules and the animals that drove the economy of this nation, upon which our backs were the strongest backs. They couldn't get the Indian. They couldn't get no other people to go through what we went through, okay? So therefore, we were reduced to children. So the women were called Muslim Girls Training in general civilization class, you see? And that went on for about 40 years. And then Imam Muhammad, one of his sons, was the one that brought us into the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad. And he changed W.D. Muhammad. And he saw that we had matured. And now we needed the meaning of all of those esoteric terms. So I want to share with your listeners what it meant. He said the Muslim girls training was just a phase, a temporary phase, and that what we were called back then was the temple of Islam. We weren't called masjid.
Yeah.
Every now and then we would say mosque, but the majority of the terminology was temple. And I'm saying it to your listeners so they can understand the great wisdom of those men. Temple meant temporary, that movement of Elijah Muhammad was only temporary. It was not intended to last for the lifetime of all of us who were the followers. And we were told by the leader that the nation of Islam would be destroyed and it would be rebuilt after 3 days. So we had those teachings.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you're enjoying the Faith While Black Conversations. It's a series sponsored by Deeper Roots, the History of Islam in Americas, taught by Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick. You can find out more about the course at www.almaghrib.online. Now back to the program.
So with W.D. Muhammad, who is Elijah Muhammad's son, and he became, he pronounced that Elijah Muhammad is not the messenger of God, and he himself converted to Sunni Islam, and he then, the largest conversion, mass conversion to Sunni Islam in the Western world happened at that period of time. What's that?
It happened in one day. It was about, the minimum number we know was 100,000 people.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, but it may have been maybe 500,000. At that time we had telephone hookups all across the United States, and all of us took the Shahada at the same time.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, so too.
I wish someone had a video camera.
Yeah. We may have that collection, we may have. I have to go back to Chicago and go through the archives and see if we can pull it up. Usually most of those were recorded, I forget what the term was, something like 8-track, but it's not 8-track. It just escapes my language right now. But anyway, let me tell you, let me finish the point I was making so your viewers can understand the transition. We used to call the women the Muslim girls training, okay? And then Imam Muhammad, when he saw that we had grown and we could take the language of Muhammad the Prophet and the Quran, then he called the woman, he said the woman is the womb of man. And he was saying in the leadership of his father, we were a baby nation. But in Imam Muhammad's leadership, we had grown and we needed the mature adult language of Muhammad the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he began to tell us, no, the women are not girls. She is the guardian of the sanctuary of life. You see? Yes. And he pointed that out so that we could see when the prophet said, and paradise lies at the foot of the mother, letting us know that the job had been done by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to raise girls, and now it was time for the woman to come into her divine role that God has prescribed for her.
So there was a great sense of purpose, right, in the Nation of Islam and amongst the members of the Nation of Islam. And even as the conversion happened to Sunni Islam, that sense of purpose stayed, right? And so for you to have been the Imam of Masjid al-Ansar since 1977, right, which is unbelievable, mashallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. What has been your mission and what has kept you? I mean, Imams, they move around. They go from one masjid here 5 years, and then they go, you know what, I want to go move to California, and then they move somewhere else. What's kept you at one place for over 40 years?
Yes, the only time I went away is when I went to medical school. And then Imam Fred Nuruddin, he was my assistant. He became the resident imam. And then when we finished, we moved back. And the reason why is because it's just like a family. When you have a family, you know, you don't change parents. You keep the same father, you keep the same mother, because you need that consistency. So we needed something to show us our original self. In the Nation of Islam, we used to say the black man was the original man. The original man was the Asiatic black man. But, you know, in Al-Islam, we don't have it like that. You know,
even that term Asiatic is interesting. So it's not the African black man, it's the Asiatic.
You know, right. And you'll know it's because, as again I say, it was this mystic language. And you'll know it's asasa. You know, asasa means foundation in Arabic. So since we didn't know what asasa meant, then we got the closest thing, which was Asiatic. And it is just to say that the man is the foundation for the family. You see?
Okay.
Yeah. And so we don't move around, because what people needed, we needed an identity of our original self before there was any such thing as nationality, before there was ethnicity, before there was such things as races. You know, we need something that said the original self that Allah made, you know. And so this is why myself and many others were imams for many, many years, because you needed the father image along with the mother image over the community.
So out of a sense of male responsibility.
Exactly.
This was something.
Allahu
Akbar. Say it again.
Yes, so what I'm saying is that we didn't have the Arabic like I have now.
Yeah.
But we had the meaning of that. You see what I'm saying?
That the men are the maintainers and the protectors of women.
Yes, and that's what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad demonstrated. He made us live it, though we couldn't recite it. So when the time came, then we could recite it, but we were living it all along. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is it fair to say that most imams in the WD community stayed in their posts, so to speak, stayed in their communities?
In the transition from Elijah Muhammad, we were called ministers.
Yes. So you were a minister before.
Oh, yes, I was a minister. Yes. And I would say the majority of the ministers followed Imam W.D. Muhammad, and we came into the language of Imam, you know, the Imam.
And Masjid al-Ansar, was it a temple before?
Yes, it was called Temple 29, or it was called Mosque 29. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when I got there were pews there, just like you have in a church.
Yeah.
Pews.
Yeah.
And after about, I'd say, I don't know, maybe 6 or 9 months, we took the pews out.
Were you sent to South Florida by the Nation of Islam?
From Chicago, yes, sir. I was sent there from Chicago. Mm-hmm.
And did you have a say in where you go, or is it literally just?
No, not at that time. You know, we saw the need in various parts of the country, and so we responded to the need. We gave up our own choice. You know, we responded to the need that we saw in the people. You know.
I mean, if you get sent to South Florida, that's not that bad of a place to get sent to.
Yeah, especially coming out of the real icebox, which is
coming out of Chicago. Allahu Akbar. Chicago. First time I went to Chicago was in the winter. I felt like my face was gonna fall off.
Exactly. You know.
Yeah. No. I'll take South Florida over Chicago any day of the week.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So was Masjid al-Ansar, was it? Rumor has it that it was purchased by Muhammad Ali, or is that the case? Or
no, it's not Muhammad Ali. It was purchased by Elijah Muhammad. But Muhammad Ali and many others, his manager Herbert Muhammad, which is one of the other sons of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the charities from the Muslims throughout the Nation of Islam, all across the United States, Elijah Muhammad would collect those charities, and he would purchase the temples across the United States. He would purchase schools and restaurants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it wasn't Muhammad Ali directly, but he contributed thousands and thousands of dollars. You know, this I know. across the United States, but especially there in Miami. When I was there, when he was alive, he would come and visit frequently and make donations. Oh yeah, he was a wonderful man.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, inshallah, his good works will far outweigh any of his faults.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, he's just so incredibly loved. And I hope that that's an indication of Allah's love for him.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of which, I Googled your name earlier and I saw your IMDb credits come up. So were you participating in a documentary by Muhammad Ali or was that your documentary or how did that work?
Mine, that was for him and the community. And they had to twist my mind in order to do that.
They had to convince you?
Listeners, I want to give them something else that we had.
Yeah.
In the name of Islam, I was mentioning that we were called the FOI, the fruit of Islam, right?
Yes.
And again, that was for the mindset that we had at that time. But
fruit of Islam, by the way, is known as the muscle, right? They're known as like the security and the
unit of the community. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what we had, more importantly, was, again, like the women had grown to become the womb of mind. Her name changed from girl to the womb of mind. The same thing happened with the males. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad held us as a fruit of Islam, but when Imam W.D. Muhammad saw after 40 years we had grown as adults, he gave us the new Islamic name. And that name was Man is Mine. We went from the fruit of Islam to be called Man is Mine. And what that did, that made it easy for us to transition out of identifying as black. You see what I mean? We used to say the black man was God, the black man was first, so on, so on, so on, so on, so on. So we needed something to bridge us out of that baby oppressive language. It was good language, but it's like you do children in kindergarten. You teach them red and yellow and orange and blue colors, right? Yep. But once they mature, you can't teach a 40-year-old baby that he's a color. You have to teach him that he's the abstract being. So Allah blessed Imam Muhammad. He told us, he said, Allah is a divine mind. Now, you know Allah is bigger than a mind, but imagine telling a baby that. It made it so easy for us to make the transition out of race consciousness or color consciousness into the consciousness of a thinking being. فَذَكِرْ إِن نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى. And think, for thinking is beneficial. So that's how the Imam made these transitions. He would take the phrases of the Quran and he would apply it to the void that he found in the minds of our people. And he told us, he said, man is not governed by instinct, but he's governed by intellect. And that is what distinguishes man from the animals. And he told us, when you threaten an animal, the animal's only response is going to be biological reaction. He said, but when you threaten a man, he does not react, he responds. And with his intellect, and in that way you have leveled the playing field. And I want to speak to the problem that we have right now.
But before you get to the problem, doctor,
okay.
So even now, as you're talking about W.D. Muhammad and the way that he would communicate with the community, right?
Sure.
How does one individual, how do you sit over 100,000 people or 200,000 people, right? Like what value is being given to the community to the effect where you are able to demand such a following and such loyalty, especially after the death of his father. So after the death of his father, I'm assuming that you like, how do you collect, for example, charity, right? Without a state behind you. How do you collect, quote unquote, zakat, right? Without the power of a state behind you. How do you get such incredible buy-in? Is it social pressure? Was there a lot of social pressure within the Nation of Islam?
There was no pressure at all. How did your great leader you told me about in Sudan affect your people? It was because of his sincerity of his heart. The people saw the sincerity. even though it may be some mistakes in the language here and there, you know what I mean? But they could wait. We were taught all before Wallace became the leader. We were taught since 1933 that Wallace would be the leader to help his father. So Father Muhammad conditioned us for 40 years. We would be reminded of this year after year after year. So the majority of us remembered that teachings, okay? So then when the crisis came and that we needed insight into the language, this made it easier for us to accept. I need to give your listeners another example. We used to believe in the mothership. We believe that there was a plane, the UFOs, that they talk about nowadays. The Star Trek, the show Star Trek and all. They got that from the Nation of Islam. All of that was from, I'm telling you the truth. All of that is the teachings of Elijah Muhammad. So not only did it affect Black African Americans, it affected movie makers.
Yeah.
So anyway, he told us, he said, the mothership is not to be seen as a physical thing. The mothership is a myth, and it's talking about the language of the Nation of Islam that was over the heads of the common believer. You see?
So there's hidden meanings. There's hidden meanings that only the intelligent will be able to understand.
Yeah, and then, we had the teachers that after 40 years, the mothership would come down. That was our teachings. And so we were looking for a round saucer to come down. But Imam Muhammad told us, no, what will come down will be the understanding of what those teachings meant. And so when he would give those kind of explanations, it was so overwhelming and so clear till it made us to give him just unquestionable support. Because nobody could answer those esoteric mythological statements, And
was it also the integrity as well, in the sense that you mentioned a lot of money coming in, a lot of businesses being done, transformation happening, schools being built. Right. So at some point when a person has a positive track record where they're able to execute, you get a lot more buy-in as opposed to someone who has, the classic example in a masjid, they fundraise for $2 million and then they say they're going to expand the masjid and then it doesn't get expanded. They say they're going to build a school and the school doesn't get built. And after a while, people's buy-in diminishes. And so if you have someone who actually executes what they are promising, then people will be more likely to follow them. Is that at play here?
Yes, sir. That exactly happened with Elijah Muhammad and with Imam W.D. Muhammad. I was his personal assistant, almost like his shadow. And I would see thousands of dollars come in, with charity, sadaqah.
Yep.
And I would see him give those thousands of dollars. I saw this with my eyes. I saw that he would spend on the community, on the believers. He would give the majority of the charity to the poorest people in the community across the United States. I traveled with him and I saw this. I saw him give money to conditions and communities throughout the world. I saw
how many questions would he ask before he gave somebody money?
He wouldn't ask any questions. He just needed to know what was the state of the condition of the community. And once they
no zakat form that they needed to fill out or nothing.
No. I never saw it. Some other imams, maybe they saw it. I didn't see it. In the early years of his leadership, when I was there, no. And the reason why, he traveled around the country before he became the leader. Mm-hmm. Elijah Muhammad sent him around to prepare the people for his leadership. You see what I mean? So he knew many of the conditions before he actually became the leader.
So he knew the conditions, not just of his own city, his own locality. He was in Chicago as well?
Yes.
But he knew the conditions of his communities throughout the country.
That's right. Yes, his father sent him there. Mm-hmm.
And he would give them money without asking them questions.
Of course. I was sent to those various cities myself. in the Nation of Islam and under Imam Muhammad's leadership for the same reason, to help those communities develop, to come into the Sunnah of Muhammad the Prophet. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
The reason why I'm asking is because I know that a lot of the poor get, even with their want and their need, they get put off by these incredibly long donation forms that they might find in different masajid, where they have to put in so much detailed information that it just becomes, it becomes a barrier between them receiving zakat in the first place.
I don't do that in Masjid Al-Ansar. I've never done that over the 40 years. I don't think Nuruddin has done that either, you know, because most of the people, when we see them, we know most of them. But there are those persons that we have helped that we didn't know, both Muslims and Christians.
Yes.
Masjid Al-Ansar has helped, but I know Muslims have also. So this is not only indicative to Masjid Al-Ansar. I'm just saying that for the benefit of your viewers.
Yes.
They would know. I never done that, you know.
Did what type of surgery do you practice, or what kind of surgeon are you?
I'm an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. You know, and those are people who deal with reconstruction of the face, automobile accidents, broken jaws, neck cancer, and then the most boring thing we do is remove teeth. You know,
you don't need a surgeon for that. You just need a pair of pliers and a sister that doesn't like you. That's all you need.
Well, you can come and take my job.
So,
but some cases, some extractions are very serious and can be dangerous.
Was the nation of Islam involved in you pursuing that?
Of course. We used to have the teachings that you have to qualify yourself in the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He insisted that we be doctors, engineers, lawyers, technicians, mathematicians. He insisted that. We used to have the Muhammad Speak newspaper, and in the center, it was called the Progress section, and they would show you all of the various cities and the achievements and accomplishments that were done by the various masjids and individual followers.
So what did that look like? If you, for example, graduated high school, what would happen to you in the nation? Or if you graduated college, was there some sort of ascension in rank? Was there some sort of celebratory event? What?
It was all of the above, as you have stated. And we were told that you put the hands of your community in the most resourceful people. Oh, yeah. And so that was practiced in the Nation of Islam as well as in the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad.
Were a lot of these individuals, because it almost sounds like it's replacement for family, right? Normally it's your mom and your dad who are pushing you, for example, for this type of accomplishment, for this type of academic achievement, for this type of, was the Nation of Islam, did it attract people who were coming from fatherless homes, for example? Did they attract people did they take that role?
Yes, sir, most certainly. And we would go after those people. We would go door to door, you know, and we would sit down and we would talk with them. We would advise them, and then we would invite them to the masjid, the mosque at that time. And the majority of them, if they didn't convert, they became our greatest supporters, our greatest friends, because they saw someone who legitimately cared for their condition and tried to help improve their condition in every way, socially, economically, you know, so on and so forth.
You know, something when you think about the
let me tell you one of the things, the reason why we did that.
Yeah.
What I want to do is give a lot of language, and in time, I think maybe the viewers will understand what I'm trying to say. What we would do, we were given language. We were given a phrase like this: nothing is changed in the world until something is changed in your mind. Okay? Now that's the colloquial language. That's the language, but where is its source? For Muslims, yes, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what's in themselves. So you know this. But what I'm saying, when you had people who were not familiar with the Lughat Arabi, with the Quran, then you had to take the Quranic language and put it in English you see, and that motivated us just as if you were reciting the Quran, the actual Quranic verse. So I'm saying this so people can understand how the Nation of Islam and how Imam Muhammad was so able to move this community. It was because he was, if he had an audience, he would tell us, I'm going to use English because most of you can't read Arabic. So then he would translate and he would give explanation. And man, can you imagine somebody who couldn't spell their names giving this kind of insight? It made giants out of them. And in addition, he would tell us, let me say one more thing.
Yeah.
He would say this. He would say, the world of human beings, you do not pick it up with your hands. You pick the world of human beings up with your eyes and your ears. And it then forms a mind over the first mind you had. Now, man, listen here. I'm just telling you, when I would hear this phraseology, this is what gave me the hunger to learn the Arabic, because he would tell us this is in the Quran. And when I would read the Quran, back then I was only reading English, I said, I never saw it. Yep. And then he would tell us just as you did. He said, this is chapter so-and-so and such and such. So what it did, it created an appetite using the wisdom in English. It stimulated the appetite in Arabic. And now the community of Imam Muhammad, we have hundreds and hundreds now of his followers that are reading the Quran in Arabic. Yeah. You know, it's a miracle. And many of them still have difficulty with English, but they're reading Arabic. That's a miracle in the United States. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You've mentioned language a number of times now. And one of the things that the Nation of Islam is famous for is its ability to transform people who otherwise wouldn't be able to even spell their names into eloquent individuals. Famously having to write a letter to Elijah Muhammad without any misspellings, no grammatical mistakes before you are even accepted into the Nation of Islam.
Now, as much as you saying that you got a lot of information.
So I mean, we're all learning, but what that does is that it gives people expectation, right? A lot of times people suffer from having low standards of themselves and nobody ever having any sort of high standard for you. And so when you say to somebody, no, I'm not accepting you. And of course, another important aspect is a standard, right? Just having a standard. And one of the things that I lament personally is that, of course, we are supposed to have open doors as Sunni Muslims. Everybody comes in and just, come as you are, you're welcome. But we should also have standards for our leadership. We should have some part of our religion has to be aspirational, where you can become a better version of yourself. Right. The Nation of Islam seems like it provided that.
Yes, sir.
And Elijah Muhammad provided that. So the question that I have for you is, with regards to the transformation of language, what effect did that have in the community that you saw?
Okay. The human being, he is formed in the stomach of his mother. Uterus, medical language, but stomach, right?
Yeah. Womb.
That's right. He's formed in the womb of his mother. That is, a physical body is formed in the womb of his mother. Now, what about the mind? The womb for the human mind is language.
Mm.
You see the powerful ideas now? Most people say, how did Wallace Muhammad do this? It's these ideas that were germane that brought about birth in a mind that had been made sterile. I hope I'm making
Allah says, Ar-Rahman allama al-insan, khalaqa al-insan, allamahu al-bayan. He taught him eloquence. Communication. Yeah.
Look, I'll give the English, I'll let you do the Arabic. But you're exactly right. But what I'm saying, you're helping me for your viewers to understand, to bridge the gap. If I give I guess we could say the secular language, then if it skips my mind, then you can give the Quranic or spiritual language. And then what it does,
yeah.
it bridges, it shows the universality. Because something you asked earlier about there was an absence of men in the Nation of Islam. We had a lot of gambling in the black community. Outside of the nation, I'm talking about the general black community.
Yeah.
A lot of dope, heroin, reefers, etc. A bunch of filth. And you know a man can't stand up if he's drunk.
Yeah.
So Imam Muhammad, he told in the Quran, and you can recite it for me, that man is a growth. That Allah has created nabatan. Allah has created the man in nabatan. And so we didn't understand, so he put it to us this way. He said, the plant is firmly established in the earth. But like the plant, you must first reject corruption. The plant life might find itself in an environment that is corrupt, but the life of the plant doesn't accept the corruption.
Okay.
So he was using that explanation of that verse in the Quran to help us to understand you may find yourself in a so-called rundown ghetto, but it doesn't mean that you are ghetto in your essence. You see? Yeah. And
until you accept it for yourself.
That's right. That's right. And now you are formed with influences against your original identity. Yeah. Because he would tell us, how Allah tells us in the Quran, لَقَدْ خَرَمْنَا بَنِي Adam. And Allah has
honored.
Children, yes, all of the children of Adam are honorable. Yes. So we have the thinking that goes against the biology, and I want to say this, just let me say this for your viewers. The human being has a biology. This is our language. This is one of the teachings we used to have. The biology tells you bio is life and logical is logic. So in the Nation of Islam, and then Imam Muhammad, they would tell us that the flesh is not sinful. Science itself says the flesh or the body is logical. And if you have a cigarette or a wine bottle and you have it in your hand and you go to sleep, your mind is no longer aware and your body takes over in its innocence and in its purity, and you will never put the wine bottle in your mouth. You'll never put the cigarette in your mouth because you are under the original laws of purity of the excellence of the human being that Allah made. Man, look here. You could hear wine bottles dropping and hitting the ground all across the country.
But what happens, this brings up another question. So you said that there's no social pressure, but what happens if you have someone who's part of the nation who does drink, for example? They're like, you know what, I still want to drink. And was there a concept of commanding good and forbidding evil?
Yes. In the Nation of Islam, we put you in Class C.
So what did Class C look like? What did that look like?
It meant that you were a common cavey. You lost all your civilization.
A common caveman?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. You lost civilization. The teachers we had, the job of the civilized man is to teach the uncivilized.
Okay, so for example, I'm assuming they weren't allowed to smoke, right? Smoking cigarettes was not allowed. Right. So you see random brother so-and-so, he's smoking a cigarette on the corner of such and such street and such street. What happens to this brother?
We would put them in a restrictive class. They may be there in 30 days, 90 days.
How many witnesses would have to see him?
Oh, he'd be brought before the whole community. Depends on how large the masjid was at that time. You had to come in front of all of those members, and then
to talk about him having been seen smoking on such and such day.
Whatever the violation was. But it was done in
how big or small does the violation have to be? Any violation?
Smoking a cigarette, smoking reefers, drinking wine, fornication, adultery, the whole gamut of social violation and religious violation. And depending on the violation was the length of time that we were put out of the community back in that day. So you could be put out for 30 days, 60 days, a year, 2 years, 3 years, like that. Now,
and wasn't there worry that this person won't come back?
No, not really, because it was a powerful magnetic attraction. Most of the people would be fighting to get back in before the time was up, because of the camaraderie, because of the brotherhood. It's very powerful, very sincere, very.
So
beautiful.
how come that doesn't exist in Sunni Islam? Because we do have the concept of hajr, which is boycotting. The Prophet ﷺ did that to Ka'b ibn Malik. He had him boycotted for 50 days.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, and the books talk about hajr al-mubtadi', right? Boycotting the innovator and the fasiq, the transgressor.
Right. Yes.
But the fear is that if you were, you know, some kid does drugs in the community, some person smokes, and then if the community boycotted that person, that they just wouldn't come back.
Yeah. Well, you know, that just depends on the integrity of that particular community. If that particular community holds fast to the teachings of Muhammad the Prophet and it is practiced in that community, nobody wants to leave that community, because the community really demonstrates an extended family. That's the answer. The more that the people can see the sincerity of heart, it's not that you're not going to make mistakes. It's what the people know to be the intention. They will not want to be put out of the community. I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. I've seen this.
What communities have you seen? Because I can't think of any that would be like that.
Yes, I'm talking about the communities, my experience from my community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The other communities, I can't say because I haven't spent that kind of quality time, you know. But I have met the wonderful leaders. I've met all across the United States. Very good leaders, imams that I know. I'm not talking about African Americans. I'm talking about from overseas. Good imams, you know, and they themselves hold a powerful attraction. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So speaking of powerful attraction, something unique to the African American community, specifically the Nation of Islam, but I'll extend it to the African American community, is that the Nation of Islam was able to create an indigenous correlation between, an indigenous relationship with the religion of Islam. So you have hundreds of thousands of people who are able to convert to Islam without batting an eye, and see that they haven't changed themselves. They haven't transformed into anybody else. And the African American community until today benefits from this fact that when a person accepts Islam, it doesn't look like they have left any aspect of their African Americanness, that they're I think you're on mute now.
Oh, what happened?
Oh, no, I hear you. Okay. Right? It's not foreign to them. They all have an uncle who's Muslim or a cousin or something to that effect. And the Nation of Islam, even when it comes to cuisine, right? The Nation of Islam is the only community to actually create an indigenous Muslim cuisine. Everywhere you go now, when you talk about Muslim cuisine, it's all stuff that's coming from abroad, whether it's hummus or whether it's food or whether it's whatever. But it's only, you know, bean pies, legendary.
Bean soup, bean pie,
yeah.
Brown rice, on and on and on.
So
you've been hiding.
Well, I would get the bean pies in Newark, New Jersey. That's where I'd get them from. Yeah.
One of our main areas.
I love the bean pies. I haven't gotten them in Houston. I don't even know if you can get them in Houston. But the point here is the creativity, right? And in general, the African American community, I believe, is the most creative community in the United States, whether we're talking about social capital, whether we're talking about cultural capital. And so that being said, with regards to the immigrant community, or how are they able to create such a powerful culture? Was this something that they actually deliberated over? This was a formula that they went out to achieve? Yes,
sir. And this unity problem that you mentioned it is because man himself in general is separated from his original self. And the big problem in our unity is this diversity, of races and ethnic groups that has separated from the original person. Now, I'm going to use another approach. In the Quran, it says, it is Allah who has made your features, many, many features. But then it says, and he has made your picture or feature, meaning one. And that is to say that the internal identity of the person is the same for all of us. And the external identity is what varies. So my skin is pale, it's orange, it's olive, is white. That's the external features, plural. But the Quran says there is an identity that is one. Surakum, you know what I'm talking about. Surakum. And we have to help our people to understand, I'm going to use the religious terminology, Tawheed. And the diversities of the races, this diversity is to carry man's unity. We have diversity so that our unity will have legs and wheels to carry the unity. And I say this to people, and let me say this, Ammar.
Yeah.
My right hand is diverse from my left hand. They're not exactly the same. My feet are diverse from my hands. So all of these different limbs are diverse, but their diversity carries the unity of the body. And this is the maturity that we have to bring men's mind to, that our diversity is simply the wheels to carry the unity of the individual and the unity of humanity.
And so I know that you're used to this phraseology and symbolistic talk, but what is the unity here for those of us who aren't as well languaged? What is the unity here?
Yeah. The unity is our common essence. I would say for the people, the soul, or I would say the nature. Say for example, the heart. Use it as an example. For all of us, the heart is in the same place. The heart is not in the leg. If I'm going to do surgery on a man in China, I'm not going to go to his leg to do heart surgery. Yeah. If I'm going to go to a man in Germany, I'm not to go to his shoulder to do heart surgery. So what I'm saying, there's this common nature that's the same in every human being that exists in the same place in every person. And
it's just the outer features that are different.
The outer features is the only difference. Yes, sir. Thank you so very much. I needed help.
No, it's all good. So to come back to that question about the bean pies and the not just the bean pies, but now that I'm thinking about them, but the idea of just focus on creating an actual, how important was it to create an Islam that looked and felt completely authentically American?
Okay, in order to
was there an intention to not be foreign? Because later in the 80s and 90s, even amongst the African American community, you see this absorbing of foreign verbiage and dress and the kufis and the thobes and these types of things. But when you look actually at the Nation of Islam, you don't see any of that.
Right. What we were taught is that the Muslim is the original man. Muslim is the creation of all people. All people are Muslims. And so we were told, as we have in the Quran, Allah made us into tribes and nations, not to despise one another, but to know one another. So then that language was used to spur us to establish our own identity. Just like the Sudanese have their identity, the Ethiopians have their identity, the dress of all of these other Muslims are different from the other Muslims. So we were told, since we were stripped of our knowledge in our language, our culture and tradition, now we are a new people. We are new people being created by Allah in the United States. And so we had to get busy to create our own cultural taste, our own dress, our own language, so that we can contribute to the contribution of human mind, the universal mind of man. Mm-hmm.
And what's missing in the Muslim community today, in your estimation?
The consciousness of what Muhammad the Prophet brought, the practication, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, for example, you know, the Prophet, he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that there's no superiority of an Arab over non-married, of black over white, that kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So if I take that language of the Sunnah and bring it into the cultural language of today, what we're saying in America, there is no race problem. America has a mind problem. It is just two retarded social groups. I'm trying to bring it down where we come out of color and we go to what the real problem is. You know, if you have a tree, this is for your...
So what are the two groups?
What they would call the two groups are, unfortunately, the black one and the non-black.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this problem has degenerated into the kindergarten, I would say, color consciousness. You know, this is the problem. Yeah, we have to be more rational and less emotional. This is the problem. We have to be more logical and less impulsive to survive the world that is going to come. And these are saboteurs that are taking advantage of the situation. Rather than having the people to focus on the injustice in the society, these saboteurs...
But isn't the injustice tied to color?
Oh, of course. But let me say this to your viewers. Our contribution to the narrative is this. If all you do is respond to colors, you'll forever be tied up in a paper bag. You will never come out of the paper bag. You will not fight your way out of a paper bag. Listen, the people who are manipulating colors, they want us to be at each other's throats so that they can maintain the power, to keep us out of the wealth, to keep us out of the power. You cannot fight a thinking man with emotionalism. You'll never win that fight. And this is what I'm trying to say to your leaders. This is what our leaders have said. Be careful of your approach. You have to use a two-pronged approach. And I want to say this, two-pronged approach. We have to address our people. If they're down in color, we have to address them in color. But we have to make effort to evolve their thinking from color to logic. You see, this is the struggle for Muslims. How do we help the masses? Both the white masses and the black masses are suffering. They're held under color consciousness, and they can't.
How do we uplift them from color consciousness?
That's what you and I are doing right now. Sharing these concepts, putting these germane concepts out in the public.
One of the things, I'll be honest with you, one of the things that I challenge and I've criticized before is, even within the Muslim community, because of this quote unquote wokeness, is that you find some sort of animosity towards white people, right? And just like I didn't choose being black, they didn't choose being white, right? It is not inherently criminal to be white.
Exactly.
But we need to, but because of current political environments, and like you mentioned, emotionalism, we end up wanting to, and a little bit of self-righteousness at the same time. We want to extend that type of animosity towards our brothers and sisters who are white as well. Yes. And that doesn't really benefit anybody, because the Prophet ﷺ was sent to everybody.
Correct. So we have this challenge. Remember, we had Jihad al-Nafs, right? The struggle of the soul. Jihad al-Kabir and Jihad al-Sagir. The small jihad and the big jihad. And so it's talking about that we have to have the first conquest, and the greatest conquest should be the conquering of the individual self. We have to conquer the own self, tame ourselves, and civilize ourselves. and refine ourselves. And again, what I'm saying, anybody who emphasizes on their flesh are emphasizing on the inferior of their creation. You see? And this is what we have to help people to understand. The color that you have is just a circumstance that you're in. It is not your identity. Okay?
Being black doesn't make you righteous, and being white doesn't make you wicked.
Of course not. And listen, the person who falls out in the street, they have a heart attack, they don't ask for a black man, they ask for a man of medical knowledge. They're not concerned about the color of this. Save my life. Color is not going to save the life. It's the knowledge of the person that's going to save their life. And these are the examples that we use, okay? You just happen to be, wait, let me say this.
I'm with you.
The whitest person, if you put him in Sudan and leave him for 1 million years, he'll be blacker than you, Ammar. And if you take me and put me in Iceland and leave me there for 1 million years, I'll be whiter than any white man in America. So color is only the result of the sun in the geological term and period of time that the person has been in a certain part of the world. This is another methodology we have to give people. When we can use these concepts, it strikes them. And most people have to admit, okay, now I understand how I am to see color. You see? Yeah.
That it's something incidental about people.
Yes.
But when you have a particular group of people who are downtrodden because of their color, shouldn't you then have to focus to uplift them? Right? And they've been beaten down because of their color, and they've been told that their color is ugly and their color. And so instead of me saying their color is ugly, I'm now going to focus on uplifting them by focusing on that color, for example, being beautiful. And so I have to survive in kindergarten. So I have to use the language of kindergarten.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you. See, now you got what I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Kindergarten is a natural stage for human being, right? Kindergarten only means the innocent garden or the innocent stage of the evolution of the intellect. Okay, but
I should be moving them to graduate from kindergarten.
There you go. That's the point of our religion. It really is the point of all religions. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Jazakallah khair, doctor. It was a pleasure having this conversation with you.
It's been my honor. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
You got to let me know when you're in Houston.
I'll be there next week.
You're still traveling like there's no COVID-19 outside. I haven't even left my house in 3 months.
Listen, this pressure, I want to share this, what I tell a lot of believers. I have some very good supporters in Miami. They really, some of the best people I have. And they are concerned about me traveling and doing what I do, right?
Yeah.
And concerned about my health, so on and so forth. But I tell them that I have read very powerful teachings of Muhammad the Prophet. One where he said, talking to Muslims now, if you see a wrong being done to a person and you do nothing about it, Allah will blind you. This is one of his powerful hadiths. Then he said, if you say nothing and you do nothing, when you make dua, Allah will not respond to your dua. Now that's very scary.
Well, what are you coming to Houston for?
I'm going to Houston for surgery and also dawah and to deal with situations. Yeah, every time I go, I do both,
MashaAllah.
And then remember, I tell them, I said, the Prophet said, now look, if you see a wrong, change it with your hand. If you can't do it with your hand, change it with your tongue. If you can't do it with your tongue, hold it in your heart. So for the Muslim, he has a choice to do it one of 3 ways. We have no choice. We do not have a choice to do nothing. So this is my response to them. I appreciate them cautioning me, But then the Prophet also said this, Ammar, and for the people who were scared to speak out when an injustice is being done, he told them, he said that your death has already been fixed. So if you're afraid you're going to be killed, you already have a date to die. So maybe your death will be 20 years from now. So you did 20 years of saying nothing, you see? And then he said, and your sustenance will be fixed, meaning that you won't lose your job, you will have a place to stay and eat. So he tried to take away all excuses that a Muslim would have for speaking up to the truth. And the Prophet also said, the best martyr or the best believer is one who speaks truth in the face of a tyrant, you know? So this man, I'm telling you, when I read his sayings, it puts chills in me. You know, because there's some men who fear men as they should fear Allah. Wow. And I know this is the Prophet's way of bolstering us, of giving us the strength that we need to help make the society better. And you know, the Prophet, as we were always taught, if he saw danger, he would try to go around it. And he would go around it unless there was no other way to go. Then he would go head on with it, you know. So he didn't look for a fight. He tried to avoid fights if it was anywhere possible, you know? Yeah.
He said don't hope or don't wish to meet the enemy and ask Allah for safety.
Allahu Akbar.
But if you meet them, then be steadfast.
I know that's right. See? Wow.
Alhamdulillah.
So, yeah, alhamdulillah.
So, Sheikh, any projects or anything local that people should look out to? Anything's happening?
Next week we're going to have a very serious rally for bringing healing to Liberty City in Miami, the area where the masjid is called Liberty City.
What's the date of the rally?
Next Friday, the 19th.
Okay.
At 11 a.m. and we're going to put it on the internet, YouTube, wherever we can. You know, since we don't have access to the big media, we have to do what we can. And I'm trying to show my membership, since I myself can't change the situation with my hand, I have to take the second advice of the Prophet and speak out with my tongue.
Great.
You see what I mean? And it's going to be an interfaith rally. You see, it's not just Muslims. Yeah. Christians, Jews, Muslims, you know, socialized, political leaders, etc., you know, lending their voice to try to speak to a voice of reason, you know. And I want to say to your viewers, when we used to say the original man in the Nation of Islam, it just means the first nature in every man, being al-fitra. For us, that's the original man. And then we are telling people that this racist disposition is the person who is out of their original nature. As you were saying, you can't take a son against a Caucasian no more than you can take it against an African American. But we have to point out that both of those extreme positions are against the original nature, the same nature that we all have. You know, the human being, when he cries the same way. He don't cry in Chinese. He doesn't cry in German. You know what I mean? When he sheds tears, the tears fall down. They don't fall up. They don't fall sideways.
Yep.
So about that, what's that common nature? I'm sharing that common nature now. When we you know, so we cry the same way. We laugh the same way, you know, so on and so forth. This oneness that we all have. Mm-hmm. And we just want to caution the people who have gotten out of that original nature that Allah had created them in. You see, just remind them of them. Yeah.
May Allah guide our footsteps and make us guided and guiding of others.
Yes, and you need to keep your contribution too. Allah bless you with great memorization.
Ameen, Jazakallah khair. Looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Barakallahu feek. Appreciate your time, doctor.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.